would you introduce our honored keynote speaker?
Well, we are most thrilled to be able to host Dan Rather today to talk about what we're most concerned about, which is quality news in the country.
Dan, thank you for joining us.
Oh, it's always a great pleasure to be out here. I've been here before, and I really believe in the mission and work that's being done here, which is basically the goal of quality news of integrity. So it's my pleasure and honor to be here.
In looking at your history and the years that you were part of this media as a news anchor, and the whole TV news business has changed radically. But there's a word that pops up whenever I see Dan Rather, Jackie, and that word is courage. Courage, personal courage, and you extol the fact that those of us in the media should have courage. Have we lost our courage?
Well, not completely. I have made talks and may allude to it here today that I think in many ways we need a spine transplant. We've lost some of our backbone. We've lost some of our grit and gut, which is always the mark of quality journalism of integrity. It's not the only mark of it, but it's a very important one. About courage, I'm sorry to say I'm not a courageous person. I appreciate you saying that. I like the word courage. It was my father's favorite word, and I aspire to courage, and particularly I aspire to courage in my work. And I'd like to admire people and express admiration for people who have courage. But one of the things I want to talk about today, courage may be an overworked word, but sometimes you can underwork it as well. And we need courage from the owners and operators of news media outlets. Yes, journalists should muster all of the guts, grit, and courage they can, but where it's needed most is among the owners and operators. I understand making money. I've never worked in anything except for profit news. I believe in corporations and profits and capitalism. But news is a public trust. And to meet the responsibilities of that public trust, the news should be operated in the public interest. Now, I think quality news of integrity can make money. I know it can. I think it can be good business. But when you talk about the need for spine, guts, courage, where we need it the most right now is with the owners and operators. That's where we need it the most.
Well, that's exactly what this young lady is all about, the Fair Media Council, and what you do every day.
We try.
Thank you, Dan, for being part of this. Last year, Helen Thomas was our keynote speaker, and you can see what Jackie has done for her career. Thank you, Dan. We're
Thank you very
forward
much.
to
Good
it.
to see you. Godspeed.
Our first keynoter, Dan Rather. Dan Rather just may be the most famous journalist on the planet. He's covered virtually every major event in the world in the past 50 years. His is a resume that reads like a history book, from his early local reporting in Texas on Hurricane Carla to his unparalleled work covering the assassination of President John F. Kennedy, the Civil Rights Movement, the White House and national politics, wars in Vietnam, Afghanistan, the Persian Gulf, Yugoslavia, and Iraq. Now as the anchor and managing editor of Dan Rather Reports, which started broadcasting on HDNet in November 2006, Dan has regularly landed the biggest interviews with the world's most important and compelling figures, both famous and infamous. His passion for the news, for getting the story, and for taking on the most challenging assignments in journalism is unmatched. Among the landmarks of his career was critically acclaimed live reporting on the terror attacks of September 11th. He spent 53 hours and 35 minutes on the air over less than 4 days, beginning the morning of the attacks. Dan served as anchor and managing editor of the CBS Evening News from March 1981 to 2005, the longest such tenure in broadcast journalism history. He has received virtually every honor in broadcast journalism, and we are honored to have him with us here today. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the hardest working man in broadcast journalism, Dan Rather.
Thank you very much for that greatly appreciated, but I know over-generous introduction. I trust you all know what Abraham Lincoln said about introductions such as that. Honest Abe said, never take time to deny it the audience will find out the truth soon enough for themselves. And so it will be with you here this afternoon. I also want to thank you, Jackie, for not mentioning that the only alleged institution of higher learning from which I graduated was Sam Houston State Teachers College in Huntsville, Texas. I'm aware that a lot of people this far north never heard of the damn place. But those of us who went there considered it to be the Harvard or Yale of Deep East Texas. Old Sam Houston had about as much ivy on it as your average Burger King or McDonald's. But I was lucky to go there and proud to go there. They gave me about as much education as I was capable of absorbing at the time, for which I'm thankful. And by the way, if you're saying, well, where is this place? Well, if you look at the map of Texas, it's kind of up in the northeast corner, deep piney woods in Walker County. No reason why you should have heard of Walker County, except they have a lot of very hardworking people there, and they may have one distinction, that in this rural piney woods county in Texas, there is not now, nor has there ever been, not one single intellectual. And they are very proud of that fact. They're proud people. And if it's of any interest to you, their definition of an intellectual is, if you can listen to the William Tell Overture and not think of the Lone Ranger, you are an intellectual. But I don't want to spend your valuable time this afternoon just weaving stories from my own past. I want to do something I promised myself I would do. This requires what my friends in television know to be anchorman indulgence. And that is, it's impossible for me to be here out on this beautiful island, at this beautiful place, what a wonderful country club this is, and not have us all pause for at least a moment, just a moment or two, to pay our respects to those young men and women of ours who are in faraway places with strange-sounding names, very dangerous neighborhoods, Iraq and Afghanistan, and other date lines that don't make the papers. So if you can give me the indulgence, if you will, let's just pause for a moment to think of them. Thank you. Now, I want to offer my congratulations to this year's honorees, and a tip of the Stetson, too, to the Fair Media Council itself on its 30th anniversary. By recognizing, celebrating, and doing your best to maintain the crucial connection between news and community, I think you strike right to the red beating heart of what is most important about the news, the very integral role it plays in our democracy. If those of us in the news forget that, when we forget that, we run the risk of turning out, at best, interesting, perhaps diverting entertainment that is of little consequence. When those of us in the news remember our role in this constitutional republic, we preserve our role as a vital and invaluable part of the democratic process. This is important not for us, but for our country and our communities. In 2001, the average news consumer had to dig and dig deep to find any mention of the fact that terrorist warnings were flashing bright red at the highest levels of our government. In that summer, the U.S. military bases all over the world were going to high alert for this very reason. Why? Because the story of a murdered congressional intern was taking up just about all the space in what was otherwise a, quote, slow news summer. Yes, the Chandra Levis story in Washington was tragic and sad, but if you recall, it got play far, far beyond its relevance to almost all Americans, at the cost of meaningful international reporting of what was going on, what the highest levels of government knew, what our military bases around the world knew. Who could have seen a terrorist attack coming at the end of that summer on September 11th, 2001? Quite possibly just about all of us, if our news organizations had focused more at that time on news values and less on sensationalism. You may want to note, in the August of that summer, just before 9/11, the country was also consumed with stories about so-called shark attacks on the increase. Well, these are admittedly dramatic examples, offered because dramatic examples drive home just how vital it is for us to have a strong, independent, fiercely independent, when called for, and free American press. More often, the ways that journalism affects our lives are more subtle than the ones I've just mentioned, as are the consequences of journalism that has become weaker, more dependent on fewer revenue streams, and less editorially free. My purpose here is not to impugn journalism or journalists, or to accept myself in any way from any of the criticisms I level, whether direct or implied. My purpose is to do what I can to incite a call to thought and action. As Thomas Jefferson once put it, if a nation expects to be ignorant and free, it expects what never was and what never will be. And since our founding, a free and independent, truly independent press has served as America's primary bulwark against ignorance. The message needs to be spread far and wide that this bulwark is in peril, and with it, the very foundation of our democracy. Perhaps in greatest peril of all is local news. As newspapers fold or are subsumed into larger companies, ever larger companies that, after cutting staff, want their subsidiaries to take stories from a centralized source. Local news, print, radio, TV, and the internet, whatever the medium, is where most people get their news on a day-to-day basis, local news. And it needs to be intricately connected with the concerns of the community it's pledged to serve. We need independent observers at city council meetings, at zoning board hearings, at school board meetings, and we need these same local news sources to also remain connected to the larger world outside our towns and even outside our own national borders. I understand that life has become almost maddeningly busy and full here at the outset of the 21st century. Asking people to take a direct stake in news, to take a stake in it, the news that they see, read, and hear, is asking a lot. But it would be asking immeasurably more of people and of a people to leave everyone to their own devices to try to sort out what's real and what's not, what's fact and what's not, and what's rumor and what's not, in a nation of vastly diminished news sources and news resources. And unless something changes fast, unless those who value news make their voices heard, that's something we all need to contemplate. I'm honored to be here today because I realize that for 30 years, the Fair Media Council has been raising its voice in support of quality news in various ways. May your membership and your message grow. Thank you for the work you do. And again, my heartfelt congratulations and appreciation to this year's Folio winners. They are a reminder that journalism at its best is a noble profession with a noble mission. To those of you here who practice journalism, and to those of you who are consumers of news, I urge you to leave this building today inspired. Hearts can inspire other hearts with their fire. And I wish you all good luck and Godspeed.
To thank Dan Rather for being with us today, we have for him a keepsake that simply reads, "The Fair Media Council thanks Dan Rather for keynoting our 30th anniversary celebration and devoting a lifetime to serving the public interest with integrity and trust."
Thank you so much, Jess. Thank you very much. Thank you.
We are honored, and I don't use that word lightly in your case, Dr. Baker, to be joined by Dr. William Baker, who's had a career in television that spanned couple
50
of
years.
50
years, yeah. Can you believe it?
Starting out at, well, I'll pick it up from Westinghouse Broadcasting. In the great days of Westinghouse, had an influence in the career of a couple of people. One lady in particular, I remember the name Oprah, but I wonder what's happened to her in her career.
She's done well. She's done well, yeah.
But from there, sir, you went on to work for a number of years as part of Educational Broadcasting Corporation here in New York, which is Channel 13. And what a history you've had in your stewardship of Channel 13, bringing public broadcasting to a great level.
Thank you.
And we're so thrilled to hear that you're going to be one of our speakers today, and we're thankful that you're here to share where are we in media-wise these days?
Well, one of the things I'm going to talk about is that media is in trouble. Media is in trouble principally because the newspaper business is in such trouble. And media, electronic media, broadcasting, cable, the internet, get their information from newspapers. Well, with newspapers in collapse, the base of content is disappearing. So that's one of the things to worry about. And also, massive competition and fragmentation. 20 years ago, half of America watched the CBS Evening News with Walter Cronkite. So the next day, everybody had kind of a common starting point, a common campfire. Well, today, there are hundreds of channels, yours being one of them. You're a fine channel where people have all kinds of choices. Those choices are wonderful. But also, it's harder to amass large audiences and be economically viable with this kind of competition. So media is strained, and it's a difficult time, an exciting time, but a difficult time, and one that the public has to worry about. And that's why I've been a big supporter here of the Fair Media Council out on Long Island, because one of the things that is important is to understand media, for the audience itself to be educated about the weaknesses of media so that they can better judge the information or lack of information they're getting. So at any rate, I'm happy to be here, and thank you for the nice words.
Well, you've always been an active in your management of Channel 13. You always encouraged viewers to talk about what they're seeing, not to accept things at face value, to offer different points of view. Do you think media has become too one-sided now? Do we take too much of a side politically and other issues?
Well, I think in order to make programs more interesting, television particularly, and even the news, has become polarized. So channels, in order to create some heat and not light, say things and create action that isn't really necessary. So it's harder to trust what you were seeing for that very reason. And the other is that people wind up watching programs and networks that they agree with. So we reinforce our own prejudices. I do that myself. So what we wind up doing is you don't ever hear the other side. And that's something we should all worry about. So we all need to kind of look at the other side. If we don't get it from the source that we're watching, which we probably won't, we better take a look and see what other people are saying. Because there are always two sides, often more than two sides to every issue.
Dr. Baker, I know you're now on the faculty of Fordham University. You're involved in so many different things. But one of the things that I just want to talk about before I let you go is one of your latest books. I love this title, and I love what the title denotes also. Leading with Kindness, How Good People Consistently Get Superior Results.
Yeah, I'm very proud of the book. It's published by the American Management Association, Leading with Kindness. My doctorate is in industrial psychology, and it had always frustrated me that so many people watch the movies and watch TV and think, gee, the way we should, when I become the boss, and by the way, when you're the boss, everybody's a boss somewhere. You know, you're the boss of the family, you're the boss at the PTA, you know, everybody has leadership roles. And people often say, well, gee, I see in the movies that you've got to be a tough person. And that's really not the way to lead. And all of the psychological theory in our book is loaded with practical examples of people who are phenomenally kind, who really are successful, because that's the best way to get to get maximum output out of individuals. But by kind, we don't mean a doormat. We don't mean weak. There's a famous Gandhi line that says, "Don't mistake my kindness for weakness." And so it's an interesting book, and I'm very happy I wrote it, and I'm very happy that we're getting it into the drinking water, I think.
Well, given your success in all of your careers, you're proof that leading with kindness is the way to be. And thank you for being part of our Folio Day.
Honored to be here. Thank you.
Last but certainly not least on the keynoter list, I'd like to introduce to you William F. Baker. Bill Baker has taken a leading role in helping to shape American broadcasting in both the commercial and public sectors. After serving 20 years as Chief Executive Officer of the Educational Broadcasting Corporation, which is the licensee of 13 WNET and WLIW-21 New York, Bill is now a Senior Research Fellow at the Hauser Center for Nonprofit Organizations and President Emeritus of EBC. Actually, Bill teaches at 3 different colleges right now, so he's a bit busy himself. And if you didn't know, Channel 13 WNET is the flagship public broadcasting station, the premier national public television program producer, and the most watched public television station in the United States. It is also the largest producer of cultural and arts programming in America, and WLIW-21 is the 4th most watched public television station in the country. As an author, lecturer, and recipient of many awards and honors, Bill is a sought-after expert in the field of broadcasting and a well-known advocate for the educational potential of television. He has been called an icon of public television for producing some of the industry's most respected and popular programs, including Charlie Rose, Bill Moyer's Journal, Nature, Cyberchase, and Great Performances. Bill previously served a dual role as president of Westinghouse Television and chairman of Group W Satellite Communications, where he was instrumental in establishing 5 cable networks, including the Disney Channel and the Discovery Channel. And along the way, he also got Oprah Winfrey started as a talk show host. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage Bill Baker.
Thank you, Jackie. It's so nice to be here, and I'd like to just say how important the Fair Media Council is to this world, and I'd like to thank all of you who have supported their work. And you'll see, because I'm very much going to parrot what Dan Rather talked about, that the kind of work that Fair Media Council does is becoming even more important today. I'd like to also compliment the Folio Award winners who are here today and offer you all my congratulations. The roles of investigative reporters, people who could spend years working on very complex and difficult stories, those jobs are gone. So America is really going through a very, very tough time. And it's getting worse because the newspapers are shutting down because of the loss of classified advertising, among other things like Craigslist, young people not reading newspapers. By the way, the internet has overtaken newspapers. The latest statistics show that television's still the dominant news source in America, but for the first time, the internet has now taken over newspapers. These are some of the newspaper sites, which for the most, some of the internet sites, most of them get their news or have gotten their news from newspapers themselves. So is it the medium is the message? Are people just looking at the electronic media because it's a special and easy to use kind of medium, or is content king? I think Dan Rather, what he said, what I think the journalists in this room will all say is that ultimately, this is the bottom line. It's what you put on whatever particular medium it is. So newspapers and electronic media in general, the news model needs some work. And we've been trying to develop some news models. Obviously, One of them that we're looking at is the not-for-profit model, but we don't think not-for-profit journalism is going to ultimately ever be an answer. We think it is an answer, and not-for-profit journalism is important. But, for example, public television doesn't even really have news capability. We have news analysis capability, but very little real news capability. Consumers ultimately are going to have to pay for journalism, and they're going to have to pay for quality journalism. And then the last one is the same one that Dan talked about and that Jackie talked about, and what Fair Media talks about and what they do, which is news literacy. So this is where we're headed. It's the quote that Dan gave earlier, and we didn't conspire at all. If a nation expects to be ignorant and free, it expects what was and never shall be. 250 years ago, Thomas Jefferson also said he'd rather have a country without government than a country without newspapers. Another national park. Journalism is the only profession mentioned in the Constitution. The only profession mentioned in the Constitution. It has a profound influence on our society and our freedoms. So keep an eye, stay tuned. By the way, continue to support Fair Media and its work. And I have a little blog of my own in which I do daily updates on what's going on in the media, and you might want to check with that, 13.org/blogs. Congratulations again to all of you for your support, and again, thank you for having me here.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
And of course, to thank Bill Baker for being with us today, we present the Fair Media Council thanks William F. Baker for keynoting our 30th anniversary celebration and dedicating a career to defining the quality standard in broadcasting. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. I tried to be fast.
No, you did great. You did great.
Thank you, Bill and Dan, for sharing your insights with us today.
It turns out we have a theme.
Yeah, that was cool. Jim and I would like to welcome Dr. Fanelli and good friend Bert Cunningham to the stage now.
This is really a very special moment, not only for Dr. Fanelli, but also for myself, and I do appreciate the fact that Dr. Fanelli requested that I make this presentation because it earned me a great Bob Uecker seat up on the dais here, which has been fantastic. This is indeed a very special moment. Dr. Sean A. Fanelli's longstanding and resolute commitment to the mission and work of the Fair Media Council is being recognized today and will continue to be recognized in the years ahead with the creation of a very special Folio Award in his honor. The Fanelli Folio will be awarded in the category of Outstanding Education Reporting. This is a special folio. This special folio is not only a small token of our esteem for Dr. Fanelli, it is a well-deserved tribute to an individual who has dedicated his entire adult life to education and for more than 20 years of service on FMC's Board of Directors, and also as chair of the television judging panel during most of that time. And I can attest to Dr. Fanelli's dedication as far as being a panel chair, because I did have the privilege of serving on that committee for about 8 or 9 years. Dr. Fanelli's expertise, wit, wisdom, and clear sense of purpose helped shape the work of the Fair Media Council, which is focused on advocating for objective, informative, and meaningful local news, and in creating a discerning, media-savvy public. FMC is unlike any organization in the country, thanks in large part to the efforts of highly dedicated individuals such as Dr. Fanelli. There isn't a more venerable word in the English language than educator. So it is FMC's collective honor to acknowledge the work and dedication of Dr. Sean Fanelli by creating the Fair Media Council's Fanelli Folio for I first encountered Dr. Fanelli some 50 years ago. Yes, 50, about the time that one of our keynote speakers, Dan Rather, was starting his journalism career. I was a very young student at our local parish school, the same school that Tom Hartman went to many years ago. And while Dr. Fanelli was a very young teacher and played a great game of fistball in the punch ball in the schoolyard, this is a unique opportunity for me as a pupil to say thank you to teacher. But as you look around the audience today, Sean, you'll see lots of faces that you're familiar with. In a much larger sense, through the years, we have all been your pupils, and you have been our teacher. So thank you very much from the bottom of our hearts. We salute you.
In the words of King Henry VIII to his many wives, I'll only keep you for a short period. Certainly a heartfelt thanks to Jackie and to the Fair Media Council for this very heartfelt, I think, recognition. I really am moved by it. But I want to thank the Council for making education a special category and now a special award. Education in its many forms and in its many levels touches the lives of almost every person on Long Island. And I thank the news media for its past and continuing coverage of this vast and important enterprise. My congratulations certainly to all of the Folio Award winners that I had the privilege of judging over these past 20 years, and to today's winners. And certainly a special thanks to the Media Council for doing the work that it does over these past 30 years. I would be remiss if I didn't thank my fellow judges, because that really made it all the more pleasurable and actually enriching to judge the folios with a group of dedicated persons. And if I can give a plug for the Media Council, if you're asked by Jackie to be a judge, do it. It's really a great experience. And so I really am pleased to be able to present the very first folio, Fanelli folio, that sounds a little strange, but Fanelli folio to the Henry Viscardi School story by CW11, reporter Rob Howell, producer Mike Graham, and editor Keith Lopez.
To the electricals on the bottom.
11th grade biology is the same as in other schools, so is 3rd grade social studies.
The priority is to Omaha West.
Students at the Henry Viscardi School in Albertson study hard.
2 over x plus 1, x minus 1.
And they play hard.
I gotcha!
And while they may appear to be at a disadvantage, these students never let their disabilities, no matter how great, get in the way of learning, making friends, and having fun.
It's awesome.
And to show their appreciation for those who work so tirelessly with them, students took time out to honor the dozens of volunteers who help them in so many ways each and every day.
We want to thank you for all that you do.
All the kids here are amazing. Everyone that I've dealt with is amazing. Their spirit, their attitude is something to really behold.
I've been here for 13 years, and I've gotten an amazing experience. And the education is wonderful, so I'm lucky, I'm fortunate.
The students here look toward the future with hope and optimism, because if there's something they can't do today, they know with advances in technology, there's a pretty good chance they'll be doing it tomorrow. And just like any other school this time of year, students at Henry Viscardi are looking forward to the coming days, which include class trips, the junior and senior proms, and of course, graduation.
On Saturday, I just took my SATs, so we'll see how that goes. But college, I'm thinking of a lot, so we'll see what happens.
What are your top choices?
I like St. John's, Hofstra, Hunter.
In Albertson, Rob Hoyle for the CW11 News at 10.
Congratulations to Rob, and I also want to make sure that I present Dr. Fanelli with his special folio. Thank you.